Thank you very much. I think I have read a lot of very interesting presentations from different country contexts. Now I would like to switch to the Armenian context and speak about the transversal competencies in language education in our country. I would like to say that generally when we speak about the language education, we have to take into account that the smaller part of the language education is on the surface, but the bigger layer is beneath our human interface. And this is about the transversal competencies, because these transversal competencies are the foundation of the language education, and we have to develop them appropriately so as to accelerate and facilitate the better language competencies development as well. And from this perspective, I would like to say that during the last year and as well as this year, Armenia has done a lot to improve the content of the language education. And last year, on February 4th, we adopted state standards on general education, where 8 transversal competencies have been integrated. These competencies are about language literacy, ability to learn, self-cognitive and social competencies, democratic and civic competencies, digital and media literacy competencies, cultural competencies, mathematical and technological competencies, and economic competencies, which should be integrated in the curriculum development processes and also implemented in the language education papers. And based on this paper, Armenia has also developed the education improvement program for foreign languages. This is a conceptual provision paper about the procedures that should be done so as to improve the language education. And here we have defined a lot of tasks, among them, for example, to transfer the language knowledge and development, boost the development of communicative skills, have analytical, critical, creative thinking, to be open to the new impartial approach, to be able to cognitively solve vital problems, to have autonomous learning and work skills. So a lot of things that are about the transversal competencies, and they should be implemented into the language education programs, as well as specified in the learning outcomes, which is also done. And we can see that there are several chapters: communication, culture, creative and critical competencies, and identity competencies, where for each level of school education, primary school, secondary school, and high school level, we identified several sections that should be developed, and the learning outcomes are also based on all these sections. For example, about creative and critical competencies, I would like to say for the secondary level education, for the generation of ideas, we have to propose innovative ideas and solutions based on prior knowledge. For logical sequencing, we should build thoughts with a solid logical structure. For ability to analyze, compare, and contrast facts and information from different sources, and also for progress development. For example, we need to assess the progress of the learner by comparing the knowledge, abilities, and different strengths. Or, for example, I would like to also introduce, based on this chart, the 6 grade learning outcomes, which are all codified, and they go section by section. We have, for example, 3 learning outcomes that should be developed based on the generation of ideas, 2 learning outcomes for developing logical sequencing, 2 on ability to analyze, and 2 on progress development. As we can see, everything is very well developed. It is appropriately structured, and the teachers can use them so as to upgrade the level of the language teaching, and also integrate these transversal competencies into the core curricula. And the content of the development of the course is also should be based on the principles, and this is also defined in this paper on how to develop the core curriculum. And these are, for example, a foreign language is primarily a means of communication. A foreign language is a means of learning. Communication in a foreign language is the main guarantee for developing of world recognition of others. We also speak about the acquisition of actual linguistic knowledge, vocabulary, grammar, patterns. We need to develop skills that should be used to reach a desirable effect for different purposes of communication. And foreign language courses should provide endless opportunities for the development of the values and attitudes in education. So everything is very well defined. I would like to say that Armenia has managed to translate all the papers that are connected with the implementation of the democratic rules. This is the reference framework, the model of competencies. All these 3 volumes have already been translated and published in the Armenian language, and the teachers should also use all these 3 volumes when preparing the courses, developing programs. And but from this point, we can say that we are facing different gaps that we have to overcome through the extensive work. And the first misfortune is connected with the content of the language textbooks. It is, for example, my student, master student, has done very interesting study, and I would like to report several details for you to understand what is the situation in Armenia at the moment. English foreign language materials often include, for example, holidays, tourist sites, famous people's achievements, and food. However, these surface forms of culture are not sufficient for to understand the target culture, because they only entail the accumulation of general fixed information and do not provide opportunities to address the underlying socio-cultural interactions that occur in different backgrounds. Besides, I would like to introduce that, for example, the surface culture is appropriately introduced in the textbooks, but there is nothing about the deep culture, which should also be included in the core curricula. And I would like to say that we addressed several questions to the respondents, to the participants of the survey, and I would like to introduce the results that we have gathered for question 2. What is the most important aspect of the culture? And the students mentioned that it should be communication, then community, system, country, and what people do. Unfortunately, when we plan these study programs, course programs, we do not take into account the interest of the students as well. And we need some time to carry out some deep study, to collect information, and to develop the new materials, and also textbooks based on the students' expectations as well, because now we know that in this 21st century, the students are becoming active doers, active learners, and they do not want to wait for the teachers to send them this or that information for them to digest, to absorb, but they would also like to take part in this process. And I think that we are lack of cohesiveness between the standards, programs, syllabi, textbooks, and learners' expectations. We need to have this question to circulate among the stakeholders that are responsible for the implementation of language education, from the language education in service training stakeholders to the students. For example, what is needed to be improved, the content of the study programs, the content of the textbooks, the content of the courses, text and reading materials, and the content of the training for the integration of the transversal skills.
Lusine, sorry, we're already over 7 minutes, so if you could please just shorten it to 1 minute or so.
This was the final slide, and I would like to say that in order to bridge the gap, we need networking with the countries and the institutions that are much more advanced, and we will be glad to partner any of the institutions to develop a new project. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for all these